I'm Vanessa, 32, and I thought offering my in-laws temporary shelter showed the depth of my love for Kenneth. 9 months ago, when Phyllis and Bernard lost their home, I opened our doors with a compassionate heart. Slowly, our peaceful household morphed into a battleground of passive-aggressive comments, invaded privacy, and my husband's shifting loyalty. When I finally gathered the courage to ask about their departure date, I never expected my marriage would crumble before my eyes. Before you continue this journey with me, let me know where you're watching from. Hit subscribe and like if family betrayal stories resonate with you. 5 years ago, I met Kenneth at a charity gala in downtown Chicago. His charming smile and genuine interest in my marketing career captivated me immediately. After a whirlwind romance, we married in a small ceremony by Lake Michigan, surrounded by close friends and family. I had worked hard to become the youngest marketing executive at my firm, and my financial discipline allowed us to purchase our dream home in the suburbs, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial with a wraparound porch and backyard garden I tenderly maintained every weekend. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but we complemented each other well. Kenneth's spontaneity balanced my careful planning, and his warmth helped me connect more deeply with others. We had discussed starting a family soon, maybe adopting a dog first to ease into the responsibility. Our home had plenty of space for children, with rooms already mentally designated for nurseries and playrooms. One thing I noticed early on was Kenneth's exceptionally close relationship with his family, particularly his younger brother Tyler. While I admired family loyalty, the frequency of their calls sometimes felt intrusive. Kenneth would drop everything when Tyler needed help with rent money or relationship advice. His parents, Phyllis and Bernard, would call almost daily, often during our dinner time. I tried to be understanding. My own parents lived across the country, and I cherished our weekly calls. Family connections mattered to me too. They're just close-knit, I'd tell myself whenever I felt a twinge of discomfort. It's sweet how much they care about each other. Little did I know this closeness would eventually consume our lives entirely. The call came on a rainy Tuesday evening. Kenneth's face drained of color as he listened to his mother sobbing on the other end. After hanging up, he explained that his parents had fallen behind on mortgage payments after Bernard's early retirement and unexpected medical bills. The bank was foreclosing on their home of 30 years. "They have nowhere to go, Vanessa," Kenneth said, his eyes pleading. "They're devastated." My heart ached for them. Losing a home is traumatic, especially after 3 decades of memories. Without hesitation, I suggested they stay with us temporarily while they sorted out their finances. "Just until they get back on their feet," I said. "Maybe 3 months maximum? That should give them enough time to find an affordable apartment or work out something with the bank." Kenneth hugged me tightly, whispering how much he loved me. We had an explicit conversation about the time frame, and he readily agreed to the 3-month limit. I even remember jotting it down in my planner. In-laws move out by June 15th. The following weekend, I prepared our guest bedroom with fresh linens, cleared space in our second bathroom, and reorganized the kitchen cabinets to make room for Phyllis's special dietary needs. I wanted them to feel welcomed and comfortable during their difficult transition. When they arrived with suitcases and boxes of personal belongings, Phyllis embraced me tearfully. "You're an angel, Vanessa. I don't know what we would have done without you." Bernard, a tall man with Kenneth's same crinkly-eyed smile, shook my hand firmly. "We won't be a burden. We'll help around the house and be out of your hair before you know it." I believed them completely. The gratitude seemed genuine, and their promises sincere. Kenneth beamed with pride as he helped carry their things upstairs, and I felt good about our decision. This was what family did for each other in times of crisis. In retrospect, I should have noticed how they brought far more possessions than would be needed for a short stay. I should have questioned why they sold most of their furniture, but kept so many personal items. But in my desire to be the perfect daughter-in-law, I overlooked these early warning signs. The first few weeks were actually pleasant. Phyllis insisted on cooking elaborate dinners as her way of contributing to the household. Bernard fixed the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom and trimmed the hedges in our garden. We shared meals together, exchanged stories, and I enjoyed learning about Kenneth's childhood through his parents' fond reminiscences. Kenneth was always such a sensitive boy, Phyllis would say, serving seconds of her famous pot roast. So devoted to his family. Remember when he saved his allowance for 3 months to buy Tyler that bicycle? These stories painted a picture of a close-knit family that had weathered difficulties together. I admired their resilience and connection, even as I noticed Phyllis gradually taking over more household responsibilities without consulting me. One evening, I came home to find my carefully organized kitchen completely rearranged. "I hope you don't mind, dear," Phyllis said when I opened a cabinet looking for glasses that were no longer there. "This layout makes much more sense, don't you think? The way you had it was so inefficient." Bernard had established a permanent position in our living room recliner, the television perpetually tuned to sports channels. My books were relocated from the coffee table to make room for his crossword puzzle books and reading glasses. More concerning was Kenneth's behavior. He started coming home earlier to spend time with his parents, our date nights forgotten. When we did have alone time, our conversations revolved around his family, his father's doctor appointments, his mother's difficulty sleeping in a new environment, their financial struggles. "They're just adjusting," Kenneth assured me when I gently mentioned feeling sidelined. "It's hard for them at their age to be uprooted. They need extra support right now." I understood and tried to be patient. After all, 3 months wasn't that long. Soon, our lives would return to normal, perhaps even strengthened by this experience of helping family through crisis. As March turned to April, however, I began to wonder if I had underestimated just how much our household dynamics would change with 2 additional adults in residence. June 15th arrived with beautiful summer weather and no indication that Phyllis and Bernard were preparing to move out. That evening, I waited until after dinner, when we were all having coffee in the living room, to broach the subject tactfully. "So, have you had any luck finding an apartment?" I asked, keeping my tone light and conversational. "The 3 months we discussed are up today. I saw some nice rentals in that new complex by the community college." The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Phyllis exchanged a glance with Bernard before responding. "Oh, Vanessa, the housing market is absolutely impossible right now. Everything in our price range gets snapped up immediately. And with Bernard's back acting up again, we really need a ground floor unit." Bernard nodded solemnly. "The doctor says I shouldn't be climbing stairs anymore. Degenerative discs, you know." I turned to Kenneth, expecting him to remind them of our agreement, but was shocked by the defensiveness in his expression. "They can't just move anywhere, Vanessa," he said sharply. "They have specific needs. Why are you rushing them?" "I'm not rushing anyone," I replied, taken aback. "I'm just following up on the timeline we all agreed upon. 3 months was the plan." "Plans change," Kenneth snapped. "They're my parents. They need our help." Later that night, I tried to discuss it privately with Kenneth, reminding him of our explicit agreement. His response chilled me. "My family comes first, Vanessa. Always has, always will. I thought you understood that about me." When I pressed further, Bernard knocked on our bedroom door, interrupting with some trivial question about the air conditioning. As he left, he muttered just loudly enough for me to hear. "Family loyalty is everything. Some people just don't understand that." That night marked our first serious argument about the situation. Kenneth slept in the guest room, claiming I was being selfish and unwelcoming to his family in their time of need. As weeks stretched into months, my home became increasingly unrecognizable. Phyllis rearranged the living room furniture while I was at work, claiming the new layout opened up the energy flow. My grandmother's antique side table was relegated to the basement because it cluttered the space. My home office gradually transformed into a storage room for their belongings. Boxes of old photo albums, Bernard's golf trophies, and Phyllis's extensive collection of porcelain figurines encroached on my workspace until I could barely fit my desk chair between the stacks. "We need to keep these things somewhere," Kenneth would say whenever I complained. "It's temporary." But nothing about their presence felt temporary anymore. Personal items began disappearing or being relocated without my knowledge. My favorite coffee mug vanished, only to be found weeks later in the back of a kitchen cabinet. The decorative pillows I'd hand-selected for our couch were replaced with Phyllis's crocheted ones. The scented candles I used to unwind after work were removed because Bernard claimed they gave him headaches. Privacy became a luxury of the past. Phyllis would enter our bedroom without knocking to deliver laundry she'd taken upon herself to wash, including my delicate work blouses that now returned shrunken or misshapen. Bernard would rifle through the mail before I had a chance to see it, sometimes opening letters addressed to me because he thought it might be important. Financial strain added to my growing anxiety. Our utility bills tripled with 4 adults constantly in the house. The grocery bill exploded as Phyllis insisted on cooking elaborate meals with expensive ingredients. When I suggested they contribute financially, Kenneth accused me of being petty. They're on a fixed income, Vanessa. They can't afford to pay rent right now. Yet somehow, Bernard always had money for his premium golf club membership, and Phyllis never seemed to skip her weekly hair appointment. By month 7 of their stay, Kenneth and I were barely communicating. He began staying out late, claiming he was taking his father to physical therapy or helping his brother Tyler with various projects. Weekend outings that used to be our special time together now included his parents or were canceled altogether. Intimate moments became virtually non-existent. Any attempt at physical affection was invariably interrupted by a knock on the door, Phyllis needing help with her tablet, Bernard wanting Kenneth's opinion on a sports play. The few times we tried to have a date night, Kenneth would spend half the evening texting with his family or checking in by phone. One evening, returning early from work with a migraine, I overheard Phyllis in the kitchen talking to someone on the phone. "She's so controlling, you wouldn't believe it," she was saying. "Everything has to be her way." I don't know how Kenneth stands it. Yes, exactly, cold as ice. No maternal instinct whatsoever. I worry about them ever having children. I stood frozen in the hallway, tears welling in my eyes. Was this how they viewed me? After all my efforts to accommodate them? The worst part was Kenneth's voice joining the conversation. "Mom, be careful what you say." "But yeah, I know what you mean." My workplace became my only sanctuary, but even my performance there suffered as stress and sleep deprivation took their toll. My boss Caroline noticed my declining focus and asked if everything was all right at home. "Just some family stuff," I said, unwilling to admit how bad things had gotten. "I'll get it under control." But the truth was, I felt increasingly powerless in my own home and my own marriage. 8 months into my in-laws' stay, I noticed some alarming financial discrepancies. Our joint savings account, which we'd been building for a future down payment on a vacation property, showed several large withdrawals I hadn't authorized. When I checked our online banking history, I found multiple transfers to an account I didn't recognize. "Kenneth, what are these withdrawals from our savings?" I asked one evening, when we were momentarily alone. "There's over $12,000 missing." He barely glanced at the statement I showed him. "Oh, I had to help my parents with some unexpected expenses. I meant to tell you. They'll pay it back eventually."
$12,000, Kenneth?
Without discussing it with me first? That's our vacation home fund. They're family, Vanessa. They needed it. Why are you always so obsessed with money? The accusation stung. I wasn't obsessed with money. I was concerned about the complete disregard for our partnership, our shared financial goals, and the lack of transparency. The next day, collecting the mail, I found a credit card statement addressed to Kenneth from an account I didn't know existed. Opening it, something I wouldn't normally do, but my suspicions were growing. I discovered thousands in recent charges, expensive restaurants I'd never been to, a high-end electronics store, even a jewelry purchase. None of these items had appeared in her home. I called my friend Michelle, the only person I felt I could confide in about the situation. "This doesn't sound right, V," she said after I explained everything. "They're taking advantage of your generosity, and Kenneth is enabling it. You need to protect yourself." "I don't want to believe he'd betray me like this," I said, my voice breaking. "I know, honey, but you need to start documenting everything, just in case." The situation deteriorated further when Kenneth's brother Tyler suddenly moved in without any discussion. I came home from a business trip to find him installed in our guest room, which had previously been my home office before it became a storage space. "Tyler's having some roommate issues," Kenneth explained casually, as if adding another adult to our household required no more consideration than adopting a houseplant. "He'll just be here until he figures things out." Tyler, at 30, had never held a steady job. He bounced between part-time gigs and entrepreneurial ventures that never materialized into actual income. His financial irresponsibility was legendary in Kenneth's family, yet they all enabled it with loans that were never repaid and endless second chances. Having him in our home added another layer of invasion. He would help himself to my personal food items I kept for my dietary restrictions, leave wet towels on bathroom floors, and blast music late into the night. When I raised concerns, Kenneth accused me of being unwelcoming to his family. I began noticing secretive conversations that would abruptly end when I entered a room. Kenneth, Tyler, and his parents would huddle together in the kitchen or backyard, speaking in hushed tones. If I approached, they would quickly change the subject or disperse. "Just catching up," Kenneth would say dismissively if I asked what they were discussing. Tyler's attitude toward me grew increasingly disrespectful. He would make snide comments about my work hours, roll his eyes when I spoke, or simply ignore me entirely. Once, I overheard him say to Kenneth, "I don't know why you put up with her rules, bro. It's your house too." The truth finally emerged through a series of accidental discoveries. First, while searching for an important tax document in Kenneth's desk drawer, I found architectural plans for our home, with significant renovations I knew nothing about. The plans showed our master bedroom converted into 2 smaller rooms, the basement reimagined as an in-law apartment, and my home office completely eliminated. My hands trembled as I unfolded the blueprints. These weren't casual ideas. They were professionally drawn plans with detailed measurements and notes. The date on them showed they'd been created just 2 months after his parents moved in. That night, while Kenneth was showering, his phone lit up with text messages on the nightstand. Normally, I would never invade his privacy, but something compelled me to look. The group chat between Kenneth, Tyler, and his parents revealed everything. Tyler: "How much longer until we make this official? I'm tired of pretending." Bernard: "Patience. We need to make sure all the financials are in order first." Phyllis: "Kenneth, have you talked to that lawyer friend of yours about the property transfer?" Kenneth: "Working on it. He said divorce might be the cleanest way to handle it. She put more into the down payment, but I can argue for half since we're married." Tyler: "Once she's out, I can take the master bedroom, right? Called it first." Kenneth: "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. One step at a time." My world collapsed around me as I read message after message detailing their plan to force me out of my own home, the home I had largely paid for. They had been plotting behind my back for months, discussing divorce strategies, property division, and permanently moving in Kenneth's entire family. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. The man I had married, the man I had opened my home to help his family, had been conspiring against me all along. With shaking hands, I took photos of the messages and the renovation plans. Then I forwarded key emails to myself and gathered as much evidence as I could before replacing everything exactly as I'd found it. That night, I lay awake beside Kenneth, a stranger now, and made a decision. I would not be forced out of the home I had worked so hard for. I would not be discarded after my generosity had been exploited. I would fight back, but strategically. The morning after discovering Kenneth's betrayal, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. Once everyone had left the house, I sat at my kitchen table and methodically planned my next steps. This wasn't a time for emotional reactions. I needed to be strategic and thorough. My first call was to Harvey Coleman, a lawyer who specialized in divorce and property disputes. I had met him at a company event years ago and kept his card in my professional contacts. "Based on what you're describing, Vanessa, you need to protect yourself immediately," Harvey advised after I explained the situation. "Do not confront them yet. We need to secure your position first." Following his guidance, I gathered documentation of my financial contributions to our home, the down payment from my savings, mortgage payment records showing my larger contribution, home improvement expenses I had covered. I created a detailed timeline of the in-laws' arrival, the agreed-upon 3-month stay, and all the broken promises since. What about the joint accounts? I asked Harvey during our second consultation. Document everything but don't move money yet, he advised. That could be used against you. We'll handle that properly when the time comes. Next, I contacted a security company and had hidden cameras installed in the common areas of the house while everyone was out. The technician was discreet, placing them in unobtrusive locations. One in the living room bookshelf, another disguised as a smoke detector in the kitchen, a third in the hallway picture frame. These are motion-activated and will upload footage to a secure cloud server, he explained. Only you will have the password. My final preparation was creating a secret safe for important documents. I had removed my passport, birth certificate, and other crucial papers from our shared home safe weeks ago, storing them temporarily in my office desk. Now, I hired a locksmith to install a hidden wall safe in my closet, concealed behind a full-length mirror. They'll never know it's there unless they're specifically looking for it, the locksmith assured me. Inside, I placed all my essential documents, copies of the evidence I had gathered, an emergency cash reserve, and the extra house key I had secretly made. I also included sentimental items I couldn't bear to lose, my grandmother's jewelry, photographs from before my marriage, and the deed to the house showing my significant ownership stake. By the end of the week, I was as prepared as I could be. Harvey had drafted legal documents ready to file if necessary. I had secured a short-term apartment lease as backup, and I had transferred a reasonable amount of my personal funds to a new, private account. The confrontation couldn't be avoided any longer. The 9-month mark of their temporary stay was approaching, and I refused to continue living in this increasingly hostile environment. I decided a family dinner would be the appropriate setting for the conversation. Civilized, controlled, and with everyone present. I spent Sunday preparing a meal that ironically celebrated my diverse cultural background, dishes that represented my heritage that Phyllis had frequently criticized as too exotic. As we gathered around the dining table, the atmosphere was tense despite my efforts to appear normal. Kenneth kept shooting questioning glances at me, clearly unsettled by my sudden interest in hosting a family dinner after months of withdrawal. I waited until everyone had been served before speaking, my heart pounding but my voice steady. It's been exactly 9 months since you moved in with us. I began, looking directly at Phyllis and Bernard. I think it's time we discuss your plans for finding your own place. The housing market has improved significantly since last year. The silence that followed was deafening. Phyllis's fork clattered against her plate. Bernard's face flushed red. Tyler, who had been shoveling food into his mouth, suddenly froze mid-bite. Kenneth was the first to respond, his voice cold and unfamiliar. They're staying, Vanessa. This is their home now, too. That wasn't our agreement, I said calmly. We discussed a temporary arrangement. 3 months. Plans change, Kenneth snapped, echoing his words from months ago. They're my family. They need this stability. And what about what I need? I asked. What about our marriage? Our future? The plans we made together? Kenneth's expression hardened. If that's going to be a problem for you, maybe you should be the one to go. The words hung in the air like a physical blow. Even though I had suspected this was coming, hearing it spoken aloud still felt like a knife to my heart. Before I could respond, Tyler came sauntering down the stairs from where he had apparently been eavesdropping. A smirk spread across his face as he said a single word. Finally. The triumphant gleam in his eyes confirmed everything. This had been their plan all along, to push me out of my own home, to take what I had worked for, to discard me once I was no longer useful. I see, I said, standing slowly. Well, if that's how you all feel, I'll need some time to process this. I left the dining room with as much dignity as I could muster, closed our bedroom door behind me, and allowed myself 5 minutes of silent tears. Then, I dried my eyes, pulled out my suitcase, and began methodically packing essential items. Kenneth came upstairs an hour later, finding me calmly folding clothes into a weekend bag. "You're overreacting," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "We can talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," I replied evenly. "You've made your choice very clear. Your family comes first, but I'm not part of that family, am I?" "Vanessa, be reasonable. Where will you even go? That's not your concern anymore." His confidence seemed to waver slightly when he realized I was actually leaving. This wasn't part of the script. I was supposed to beg, to negotiate, to eventually surrender. My calm acceptance of the situation clearly unsettled him. "You're being dramatic," he tried again. "Just sleep on it. We can discuss arrangements tomorrow." "Arrangements?" I repeated. "Like the renovation plans I found in your desk? Or the property transfer you discussed with your family? Those arrangements." His face paled. "You went through my things? Interesting that's your concern. Not denying it, just angry you got caught." From downstairs, I could hear the murmur of voices, his family no doubt discussing how to handle this unexpected development. I had heard Phyllis's triumphant laugh earlier, the clink of glasses in celebration of their apparent victory. "I'll be staying with a friend tonight," I said, zipping my bag closed. "I need some space to think." As I moved toward the door, Kenneth stepped aside, still believing this was temporary, that I would return subdued and willing to compromise. Before leaving the bedroom, I paused at our closet. "I just need one more thing," I said, sliding the mirror door open. Kenneth watched disinterestedly as I moved hanging clothes aside, unaware of what lay behind them. With practiced movements, I entered the combination to the hidden safe I had installed, the soft click inaudible to anyone but me. Inside was everything I needed for the next phase: legal documents, evidence copies, emergency funds, and the new keys to my home. I selected a small jewelry box containing my grandmother's pearls, a meaningful item but not suspicious enough to raise alarms, and closed the safe. Kenneth never noticed, his attention already back on his phone, likely updating his family on the situation. As I walked downstairs, suitcase in hand, I passed Tyler sprawled on my couch, Bernard in my recliner, and Phyllis rearranging my decorative items on the mantel. They watched silently as I headed for the door, their expressions ranging from smug satisfaction to mild concern that I wasn't putting up more of a fight. "I'll be in touch," I said simply, and closed the door behind me. In my car, I allowed myself one deep, shuddering breath before starting the engine. This wasn't surrender, it was strategic retreat, and they had no idea what was coming next. Michelle opened her apartment door at 10:30 p.m., took one look at my face, and pulled me into a tight hug. "You did the right thing," she whispered as I finally allowed myself to break down. "You're stronger than all of them combined." That first night away from my home was both devastating and liberating. Michelle made up her guest bedroom with fresh sheets and brought me tea as I sat cross-legged on the bed, staring blankly at the wall. "I keep thinking I should have seen it coming," I confessed, my voice hoarse from crying. "There were so many warning signs." "Don't do that to yourself," Michelle said firmly. "They manipulated you because you're a good person who trusts others. That's their failing, not yours." Around midnight, the text messages from Kenneth started arriving in rapid succession. "You're being childish. My parents are worried about you. Where are you staying? You need to come home. We need to talk about this like adults. If you're not back tomorrow, we'll need to discuss next steps." The thinly veiled threats in that last message confirmed I had made the right decision. I turned off my phone and fell into an exhausted sleep. The next morning, I met with Harvey again, bringing him up to speed on the confrontation and my departure. "You've positioned yourself well," he nodded approvingly. "The fact that they explicitly asked you to leave works in our favor. Now we need to move quickly before they realize what's happening." We drafted an official separation notice, along with emergency motions for exclusive use of the property and temporary restraining orders if needed. Harvey also helped me file police reports documenting the financial irregularities I had discovered. The courts tend to look unfavorably on parties who try to force someone out of their primary residence, especially when that person contributed the majority of the purchase funds, Harvey explained. "The evidence you've gathered will be crucial." From Michelle's apartment, I accessed the security cameras I had installed. The footage confirmed my worst suspicions. Within hours of my departure, the family had gathered in my living room, openly discussing their plans. I thought she'd put up more of a fight, Tyler said, sprawled across my sofa with his shoes on my handcrafted pillows. She's always been weak, Phyllis responded dismissively.
No backbone.
Bernard raised a glass of my special occasion whiskey. Here's to the Coleman family finally having the home they deserve. Most damning was Kenneth's contribution to the conversation. We need to move quickly. Change the locks tomorrow. Start transferring utilities to my name only. I'll talk to the lawyer about accelerating the property transfer. With any luck, we can get her to sign away her rights in exchange for a quick, clean break. I downloaded and saved multiple clips, my heart breaking anew at the casual cruelty with which they discussed erasing me from my own life. The remote cameras also captured them searching through my belongings, Phyllis trying on my clothes, Tyler claiming items of value since she left them behind. With Harvey's guidance, I hired Natalie Spencer, a forensic accountant recommended by his firm. She meticulously traced the missing funds from our joint accounts, uncovering a pattern of escalating withdrawals coinciding with the in-laws' arrival. They've been systematically draining your shared resources, Natalie confirmed during our consultation. Based on these records, approximately $28,000 has been diverted to accounts belonging to Bernard, Phyllis, and Tyler over the past 9 months. She also discovered something I hadn't known. Kenneth had recently taken out a second mortgage on our home without my knowledge, using forged signatures on the paperwork. This is fraud, Harvey said gravely when Natalie presented her findings. Criminal fraud. We need to notify the bank immediately. My next investigative step was reaching out to Diana Winters, Kenneth's boss at the engineering firm where he worked. We had met at company events and maintained a cordial relationship. Vanessa, this is unexpected, Diana said when I requested a confidential meeting. Is everything all right? Over coffee in her office, I carefully explained the situation, emphasizing the financial discrepancies I had uncovered. I'm concerned about potential professional improprieties, I said cautiously. Given the unexplained funds flowing through our accounts, I felt obligated to raise the issue. Diana's expression grew increasingly troubled as I spoke. Actually, we've been conducting an internal audit. There have been some irregularities with client billing that Kenneth was responsible for. Nothing conclusive yet, but this adds context we didn't have. My final discovery came from contacting Margaret Wilson, the property manager listed on Phyllis and Bernard's previous rental agreement. I had found the contact information while organizing Kenneth's tax documents months earlier. Oh, the Colemans, Margaret sighed when I reached her by phone. I was wondering when someone would call about them. They pulled the same stunt with their previous landlord's son. Moved in temporarily after claiming financial hardship, gradually took over the property, and tried to force him out through emotional manipulation. They only left when legal action was imminent. This revelation stunned me. Their financial crisis had been manufactured, part of a pattern they had executed before. I asked Margaret to provide a formal statement, which she readily agreed to do. About time someone stood up to them, she said. They've been playing this game for years. While gathering evidence, I also focused on rebuilding my support network. I realized how isolated I had become during my in-laws' occupation of my home, gradually disconnected from friends and colleagues who might have helped me recognize the situation sooner. I reached out to Jordan and Melissa, couple friends who had mysteriously stopped receiving our invitations after Phyllis claimed they had made inappropriate comments about her cooking. Over lunch, I learned the truth. They had declined to loan Tyler money, which made them persona non grata to the Coleman family. We tried to warn you, Jordan said gently. But Kenneth intercepted our calls and messages. We thought you were deliberately cutting us off. Similar conversations with other friends revealed a pattern of systematic isolation. Kenneth had been screening my calls, forgetting to deliver messages, and making excuses for my absence at social gatherings. My in-laws had been steadily cutting me off from potential allies. At work, I confided in my boss Caroline, explaining the reason for my recent performance issues. Take whatever time you need, she said supportively. Your position is secure. In fact, I've been meaning to discuss the Singapore project with you. it might be a good opportunity for a fresh start when you're ready. Even my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, had noticed concerning behavior, but hadn't known how to approach me. That brother-in-law of yours was going through your mail at the community mailboxes, she told me when I stopped by to check on my garden. I thought it was strange, but he said you had asked him to collect it while you were busy with work. By the end of the week, I had reconstructed a strong support system and gathered substantial evidence of the Coleman family's orchestrated scheme to take over my home and financial resources. I felt stronger than I had in months, ready to reclaim what was rightfully mine. Michelle noticed the change in my demeanor as I organized my documents at her dining table. You look different, she observed. More like the old Vanessa. I am different, I replied. I won't be a victim in this story. It's time to take back control. With Harvey's guidance, I prepared a comprehensive legal strategy. First, we filed for divorce on grounds of financial misconduct and abandonment. Kenneth had technically asked me to leave our marital home, giving us leverage in property discussions. The divorce filing includes explicit documentation of the financial fraud, Harvey explained. We've included the forged second mortgage application, unauthorized withdrawals from joint accounts, and evidence of the coordinated effort to force you from your primary residence. Next, we secured an emergency court order for exclusive use of the property based on the evidence of planning and conspiracy against me. The judge, after reviewing the security footage and financial records, granted the order immediately. The court recognizes your significant financial contribution to the property, Harvey reported back. Combined with evidence of the coordinated effort to remove you from your home through improper means, the judge was quite clear that you have the presumptive right to occupy the residence. We also filed motions to freeze all joint accounts pending court review, preventing further unauthorized withdrawals. The bank, upon receiving evidence of the fraudulent second mortgage, initiated their own investigation and froze those proceedings as well. We need to document everything in the house before you return, Harvey advised. Create a detailed inventory of personal belongings, furniture, and valuables with approximate values and, where possible, proof of purchase. I spent hours creating spreadsheets of household items, attaching photographs and receipts where available. Particular attention was paid to family heirlooms and items of sentimental value that couldn't be replaced. As a precaution, we also prepared restraining orders against Tyler, whose threatening language had been captured on the security footage. While we didn't file them immediately, having them ready provided additional security. The sheriff's deputy will accompany us to serve the papers and enforce the court order, Harvey explained. They'll remain present while the occupants gather essential personal items and vacate the premises. The final legal preparation was a formal notification to Kenneth's employer about the financial irregularities we had uncovered, which coincided with their internal audit findings. While not directly related to our case, it added another layer of pressure. By the end of the week, we had assembled a comprehensive legal strategy that addressed property rights, financial misconduct, and personal safety. The court date was set for Monday morning, with enforcement scheduled for that afternoon. Are you ready for this? Harvey asked during our final preparation meeting. It's going to be confrontational. I've been confronted in my own home for 9 months, I replied firmly. I'm ready to end it. Monday afternoon, exactly 10 days after I had walked out with a single suitcase, I returned to my home accompanied by Sheriff's Deputy Garcia, Harvey, and a court-appointed observer. The convoy of vehicles pulling into my driveway caused immediate commotion inside. I could see curtains moving and shadows darting past windows. Kenneth opened the door before we could knock, his expression cycling rapidly from confusion to anger to calculated charm. Vanessa, what is this? You could have just called if you wanted to talk. Deputy Garcia stepped forward. Mr. Coleman, I'm here to serve these court orders and oversee their immediate implementation. Kenneth's face paled as he scanned the documents thrust into his hands. Exclusive occupancy order, freezing of joint assets, preliminary divorce filing with evidence of financial misconduct attached. This is ridiculous, he sputtered. There must be some mistake. No mistake, Harvey said firmly. Please gather your parents and brother. They'll need to collect essential personal items and vacate the premises immediately, as specified in the court order. Phyllis appeared behind Kenneth, her usual composed demeanor cracking as she recognized the official nature of our visit. "You can't do this," she hissed. "This is our home too. We've been living here for months. Without a lease, rental agreement, or legal right to occupancy," Harvey countered smoothly. "The court has reviewed all evidence and determined Miss Peterson has the legal right to exclusive use of the property pending final divorce proceedings." Bernard emerged from the living room, attempting his usual authoritative stance. "Now see here, young lady. We had an understanding." "The only understanding," I interrupted, finding my voice, "was that you would stay for 3 months. It's been 9. The court has reviewed all evidence, including security footage of your explicit plans to force me from my own home." The mention of security footage visibly startled them. Kenneth's eyes darted to the bookshelves, the hallway, searching for cameras he hadn't noticed. Tyler's reaction was the most volatile. Stomping down the stairs, he pointed an accusatory finger at me. "You conniving bitch. You planned this all along." Deputy Garcia immediately stepped between us. "Sir, that's enough. Please collect your belongings and exit the premises without further incident, or I'll be forced to consider this a violation of the court order." The next 2 hours were tense but controlled. Under Deputy Garcia's watchful eye, Kenneth, his parents, and Tyler gathered essential clothing and personal items. The court order specified they could take only documented personal belongings, not furniture, appliances, or household items they claimed to have contributed. Phyllis made a scene about her porcelain figurine collection stored in my former office. "These are family heirlooms. You can't keep them. You'll need to provide proof of ownership," the court observer explained calmly. "All disputed items will be inventoried and addressed in subsequent proceedings." When Bernard attempted to remove my grandmother's antique side table, claiming it had been a gift to them, Deputy Garcia intervened. "Sir, that item is specifically listed in Ms. Peterson's inventory with documentation of inheritance. Please step away from it." The most satisfying moment came when Kenneth tried one last manipulation tactic, pulling me aside in the kitchen. "Vanessa, we can work this out," he whispered urgently. "You're making a scene in front of everyone. Let's talk privately like rational adults." I looked into the eyes of the man I had once loved, now a stranger who had betrayed me in the most profound way possible. "There's nothing to discuss," I replied calmly. "The security cameras captured everything. Your family celebration after I left, your plans to change the locks, your discussion about transferring my property into your name. The bank is investigating the fraudulent second mortgage application. Your employer is reviewing the financial discrepancies that coincide with large deposits to your family members' accounts." The color drained from his face as he realized the extent of the evidence against him. "You recorded us? That's illegal." "Actually," Harvey interjected, having overheard, "security cameras in common areas of one's own home are perfectly legal in this state. Now, please continue gathering your essential items. You have 30 minutes remaining." After they finally departed, Kenneth to a hotel, his parents and brother presumably to another unsuspecting victim's home, I stood in my entryway, keys in hand, truly alone in my house for the first time in nearly a year. The silence was both deafening and blessed. With Harvey and Deputy Garcia gone, I methodically walked through each room, assessing the state they had left it in. The damage was substantial. My beautiful living room had cigarette burns on the hardwood floors despite my no-smoking rule. The guest bathroom had cracked tiles and water damage from neglect. My garden had withered from lack of care. In the master bedroom, I discovered my clothes had been shoved to one side of the closet, many items missing or damaged. My jewelry box had been rifled through, costume pieces scattered, but thankfully not the valuable items I had secured in my hidden safe. The most disturbing discovery came in Kenneth's desk drawer, journals and notebooks containing detailed accounts of their scheme dating back over a year, long before his parents' supposed financial crisis. One entry from Kenneth chilled me. "V continues to be useful financially, but her resistance to family integration is becoming problematic. Mom suggests accelerating timeline. Tyler ready to move in by summer." Need to isolate V further from support network. Another notebook contained what appeared to be practice versions of my signature, presumably for the fraudulent mortgage application and other financial documents I hadn't yet discovered. I documented everything methodically, photographing damage and collecting evidence for the ongoing legal proceedings. Despite the violation, I felt strangely empowered. Each discovery confirmed I had made the right decision and strengthened my resolve. That evening, as I changed the locks and reset the security system, my phone rang repeatedly with calls from Kenneth. I declined them all, following Harvey's advice to communicate only through legal channels now. The voicemails he left showed his rapidly changing tactics. First angry accusations, then tearful apologies, finally desperate pleas as the reality of his situation sank in. "Vanessa, please, you're overreacting. We can fix this." "Baby, I'm so sorry. I got caught up in family pressure. Give me another chance. You don't understand what you've done. My job is reviewing the accounts. My parents have nowhere to go.
Please call me back.
The hotel is expensive. Can I just come home for one night to talk?" I deleted each message after forwarding them to Harvey. Kenneth's problems were no longer my concern. As his world collapsed around him, job in jeopardy, legal troubles mounting, family demanding solutions he couldn't provide, I focused on rebuilding mine. The first night alone in my reclaimed home, I slept more peacefully than I had in months, despite the lingering presence of those who had tried to take it from me. Tomorrow would bring cleaning, repairs, and restoration. But tonight was for acknowledging my strength and resilience in the face of profound betrayal. The weeks following my return home brought a cascade of legal proceedings that validated my actions and brought consequences to Kenneth and his family. Our first court hearing for the divorce and property division went decisively in my favor. Judge Ramirez reviewed the extensive evidence, security footage, financial records, forensic accounting reports, and the damning journals discovered in Kenneth's desk. The court finds clear and convincing evidence of systematic financial misconduct and an orchestrated effort to deprive Ms. Peterson of her primary residence, Judge Ramirez stated. The temporary orders for exclusive occupancy and asset freezing will remain in place, pending final disposition. Kenneth's attorney attempted to portray the situation as a simple family disagreement blown out of proportion, but faltered when faced with the documentary evidence of long-term planning and fraud. "Your Honor, these were private family discussions taken out of context," his lawyer argued weakly. "Private discussions about forging signatures on mortgage documents?" Judge Ramirez countered. "Private discussions about forcing someone from their legal residence and transferring property without consent?" The court finds these arguments wholly unpersuasive. The financial restitution phase was equally definitive. Kenneth was ordered to repay all unauthorized withdrawals from our joint accounts, with interest. The fraudulent second mortgage was formally invalidated, though my credit score would take months to recover from the damage. Tyler, Bernard, and Phyllis were named as correspondents in the financial proceedings due to their clear involvement in the scheme. The court ordered them to return any property removed from my home and to pay reasonable rent for the 9 months of occupancy, a significant financial blow to their claimed fixed income situation. Most satisfying was watching their contradicting testimonies unravel under questioning. Bernard claimed ignorance of financial matters while emails showed his explicit instructions about account transfers. Phyllis tearfully portrayed herself as a helpless elderly woman while security footage showed her meticulously organizing my removal. Tyler's claim of being just a temporary guest collapsed when presented with his text messages about permanent bedroom arrangements. Kenneth's professional consequences compounded his legal troubles. His employer's internal audit confirmed inappropriate handling of client funds coinciding with his family's financial activities. While I took no pleasure in his career implosion, there was a certain justice in seeing the full scope of his deceptions exposed. By the time the final divorce decree was issued 3 months later, the court had awarded me full ownership of the house, restoration of all misappropriated funds, and a restraining order against Tyler, whose threatening behavior had escalated during proceedings. The court rarely sees such a clear-cut case of coordinated financial and emotional abuse, Judge Ramirez noted in her final ruling. Miss Peterson has conducted herself with remarkable restraint and procedural propriety throughout these difficult proceedings. As I left the courthouse that final day, divorce decree in hand, Harvey gave me a rare smile. "You should be proud, Vanessa. You stood up for yourself when many would have been overwhelmed." I had good counsel, I acknowledged, and a stronger spine than they thought. While the legal victory provided validation, the emotional recovery proved more challenging. I began weekly sessions with Dr. Morgan, a therapist specializing in betrayal trauma and relationship abuse. "What you experienced was a sophisticated form of gaslighting and emotional manipulation," Dr. Morgan explained during our initial consultation. "Multiple perpetrators working together creates a particularly devastating impact on the victim's sense of reality." Our sessions helped me recognize the manipulation tactics that had been employed against me. Isolation from friends, subtle undermining of my confidence, rewriting of agreements and histories, triangulation between family members. I keep asking myself how I missed the signs. I confessed during one session. "I'm an intelligent, successful woman. How did I let this happen?" "Intelligence doesn't make you immune to emotional manipulation," Dr. Morgan responded. "In fact, thoughtful people often give others multiple chances, look for nuanced explanations, and blame themselves first. These qualities make you human, not foolish." Gradually, I established new boundaries and rebuilt trust in my own perceptions. I reconnected with friends who had been systematically pushed away, finding many had recognized the unhealthy dynamics but hadn't known how to reach me. My relationship with my own family deepened as I shared the full story with my parents, who flew in from Arizona to stay with me for 2 weeks during my recovery. "We noticed you calling less frequently," my mother admitted, "but Kenneth always had plausible explanations when we called. We should have pushed harder." "You couldn't have known," I assured them. "I didn't even know myself until it was almost too late." Professional advancement became another pillar of my recovery. When Caroline offered me the opportunity to lead our company's Singapore expansion, I accepted the challenge. The project would require quarterly international travel and oversight of a growing team, responsibilities that reconnected me with my professional confidence. Sometimes the best response to people who try to make you smaller is to grow beyond what even you thought possible, Caroline said when congratulating me on my first successful international client acquisition. New social connections also proved healing. I joined a local hiking group, finding the physical exertion and natural beauty therapeutic. I enrolled in a gourmet cooking class, reclaiming my kitchen after Phyllis's long occupation. These new friendships, untainted by knowledge of my past situation, helped me rediscover aspects of myself that had been suppressed. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Kenneth requested a meeting. Against Harvey's advice, but with Dr. Morgan's cautious support, I agreed to meet in a public cafe, bringing Michelle as a support person who sat at a nearby table. Kenneth looked diminished, thinner, with new lines etched around his eyes. His engineering firm had ultimately terminated him, and according to mutual acquaintances, his family had moved on to another state when his resources were depleted. "Thank you for meeting me," he began awkwardly. "I know you didn't have to." "Why did you want to see me, Kenneth?" I asked directly. "I wanted to apologize. What I did, was unforgivable. I got caught in the middle between my family's expectations and our marriage, and I made the wrong choice at every turn." "Where are your parents and Tyler now?" I asked, noticing how he flinched at the question. "They moved to Florida when the money ran out. They're staying with a cousin now. They, don't call much anymore." There was a painful irony in his abandonment by the very family he had sacrificed our marriage to please. Part of me felt a flicker of sympathy, quickly extinguished by remembering the calculated nature of their betrayal. "I've had a lot of time to think," Kenneth continued. "To realize how I let my family manipulate me, how I betrayed the one person who truly supported me. Is there any chance we could try again? Not immediately, but someday?" I looked at this man I had once loved enough to marry, to build a home with, to welcome his family into my life. Whatever love had existed had been methodically destroyed by his choices. "No, Kenneth. There isn't." "I understand," he said quietly. "I just needed to try. To tell you I'm sorry. I appreciate the apology, but an apology is just words. Your actions over 9 months showed your true priorities. I've rebuilt my life without you, and it's a better life than the one we shared. As we prepared to leave, I delivered the thought I had carried since discovering his betrayal. You had a wife who loved you and supported your family in their time of need. You had a partner who contributed to our success and wanted to build a future together. You traded all that for a scheme that ultimately failed. That's a consequence you'll have to live with long after the legal matters are settled. He had no response, just a silent nod of acknowledgement as I walked away for the final time. The 1-year anniversary of reclaiming my home became an opportunity for transformation. I hired contractors to renovate the spaces most associated with painful memories. The guest room returned to a proper home office, the kitchen remodeled to my original vision, the master bedroom completely reimagined with a peaceful color palette and new furniture. Each change represented reclaiming not just physical space but psychological territory that had been invaded. The question of whether to sell the house and start fresh elsewhere was one I contemplated carefully. Ultimately, I decided against letting the Coleman's actions force me from a home I had chosen and loved. This house was never the problem, I explained to Dr. Morgan. The problem was allowing the wrong people into it. I'm not giving up my home because of their actions. As my confidence rebuilt, I cautiously began considering new relationships. A connection with Marcus, another member of my hiking group, evolved gradually from friendship to something more. Unlike my whirlwind romance with Kenneth, this relationship developed slowly, with careful attention to red flags and healthy boundaries. I notice you always verify what we've agreed to, Marcus observed after I confirmed our weekend plans for the 3rd time. Previous relationship trauma? Something like that, I acknowledged. I'm working on trusting again, but clear communication helps. I respect that, he said simply. Clarity works for me too. Professional success continued to be a cornerstone of my rebuilding. The Singapore project exceeded expectations, leading to a vice president position and equity partnership in the firm. The financial independence this provided was not just practically valuable, but emotionally healing, confirmation of my capabilities separate from the gaslighting I had endured. Exactly 1 year and 3 months after the courthouse confrontation, I received an unexpected letter with a Florida postmark. The handwriting on the envelope was unmistakably Phyllis's elegant script. For days, I left it unopened on my kitchen counter, unsure whether reading it would reopen wounds better left closed. Finally, during a session with Dr. Morgan, I decided to face whatever it contained. The letter was brief, but stunning in its lack of self-awareness. Vanessa, I hope this letter finds you well. Bernard and I have been reflecting on the unfortunate misunderstandings that led to our current estrangement from Kenneth and from you. While we never intended any harm, we recognize that our extended stay in your home created tensions that could have been avoided with better communication. If you are in contact with Kenneth, please let him know we miss him and hope to reconcile someday. Regards, Phyllis Coleman.
No apology.
No acknowledgement of their orchestrated campaign to take my home. No recognition of the financial fraud or emotional manipulation. Just unfortunate misunderstandings and an attempt to use me as a conduit back to Kenneth now that their scheme had failed. I showed the letter to Dr. Morgan, who nodded thoughtfully. This presents you with a choice about forgiveness versus boundaries. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I don't need to respond, I said after careful consideration. Forgiveness might be part of my healing process eventually, but it doesn't require re-establishing contact with people who haven't truly acknowledged what they did. I filed the letter away, evidence of their continued manipulation, but also confirmation of how far I had come. A year ago, such a letter might have triggered self-doubt or obligation. Now, I could see it clearly for what it was. My experience with the Colemans fundamentally changed how I approach relationships. I'm more attentive to early warning signs, more insistent on clear agreements, more willing to enforce boundaries. But it hasn't made me bitter or closed off, just wiser about where I invest my trust and energy. Some evenings, sitting on my restored porch watching the sunset, I reflect on the strange gratitude I feel for surviving that ordeal. In trying to destroy me, Kenneth and his family ultimately forced me to discover strengths I never knew I possessed. I sometimes wonder how many others have faced similar situations. Homes invaded, boundaries eroded, gaslighting so gradual they barely recognized it happening. How many stayed trapped because they lacked the resources or support to fight back? That's why I've started volunteering with a local organization that helps people navigate housing disputes and domestic financial abuse. My experience, painful as it was, now serves as a roadmap for others seeking their own path to reclaiming their spaces and their dignity. Life continues to evolve in ways I couldn't have imagined during those dark months. New relationships, career achievements, and personal growth have filled the spaces once occupied by betrayal and doubt. The house that Kenneth's family tried to take from me has become a true sanctuary again, not just a physical structure, but a symbol of resilience. Have you ever had to reclaim something that was rightfully yours? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself when others tried to take advantage of your generosity? Share your experiences in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of overcoming betrayal and rebuilding. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more trustworthy than the one we're born or married into. Thank you for listening, and may you always have the courage to protect what matters most to you.